All right, Overland Campaign 160 fans, here we are. We've arrived at arguably the big one of the Overland Campaign. We are at Spotsylvania, by my count, the third costliest battle of the Civil War, and we've got to set this thing up. We've got the Brock Road right behind us. Laurel Hill is over there. We've got a notable monument right in front of me, and we're going to bang this thing out with Chris White. Chris, what happened here and why?
All right, thanks, Gary. So Spotsylvania Court House is the second large engagement of the Overland Campaign. We have moved from the wilderness about 13 miles to the north of where we're standing down the Brock Road. If we are the Union Army, at least 2/3 of it will come down this road, modern day Route 613, with the ultimate goal of arriving down at Spotsylvania Court House, which is less than 2 miles over my right arm. And what we want to do if we're the Federals is get down this road, seize the intersection down at Spotsylvania Court House, and then what we can do is interpose ourselves between Lee's army and Richmond, or we can keep moving on towards Richmond because that will lead the inside track to the Confederate capital. To make a very long story short, main Federal thrust is coming down this road. There's another Federal infantry corps that will start to move out and around to the east. That'll be Ambrose Burnside's 9th Army Corps, but we'll also have some Union horsemen led by James Wilson going down the area of the Fredericksburg Road, and eventually they will take Spotsylvania Court House for a brief moment, and then they will pull back. And then the 9th Army Corps will show up later after Confederates have arrived. Confederates are moving on the far side of a small river called the Po River, which is through those trees. Believe me, it's over there. Have taken a circuitous route, and Confederate infantry are arriving in force along a low ridge line we call Laurel Hill. Throughout the day, Jeb Stuart's cavalry on May the 8th has been delaying, and now they're reaching basically their Alamo position. That's about the last defensible ridge line between here and Spotsylvania Court House. And Jeb Stuart has been, according to one man, cool as an ice cube on this day. He is riding back and forth up on top of that ridge line, and he's looking off in that direction, which is the southwest. And he sees the head of an infantry column coming towards him. It's Confederate infantry who have marched on a long circuitous route and have arrived at the backside of Laurel Hill. That will be the lead division of the Confederate First Corps led by Joseph Kershaw. Kershaw's division will start to arrive as Federal infantry led by John Robinson, a West Point dropout coming down this road, has been trying to fight his way to this area. His men will start to see this open ground. They see that the Confederate cav are on their heels, and as they start to charge across that field, up over the other side will start to arrive Kershaw's infantry, and now the Confederates have shut the door to Spotsylvania Court House. For the next few hours, this road will turn into a fire hose, spewing Yankee infantry onto this battlefield. But what ends up happening is, because it's almost like a half cork in a bottle, the Confederates have corked up the Brock Road. There's a ripple effect going up the Brock Road itself of Federal infantry, because the men at the front have made contact, they're stopped. Everyone else in the rear has to stop. So it's going to turn into a herky-jerky assault on May the 8th. Unfortunately, the man leading this assault for the Federals, the Governor Kimball Warren and his 5th Army Corps, Warren did not have a good battle in the wilderness. He was the first man who was supposed to pitch into the Confederates without making disposition, and he does so about 5 hours later. His men will be thrown back in Saunders Field. You can check out that video. Now here they come down this road once again, and his men will charge piecemeal across Laurel Hill, which will play into the Confederates' hands. The Confederates will eventually anchor their left end of their line on what's called the Po River. It's not a wide river, but it has a steep banks and is deep. It's a meandering river as well. They'll run their main line across Laurel Hill, and then their line will jut forward slightly, and then follow a ridge line through these woods off to my right, and it will start to run for five-ish miles, covering the topography over here. But as May 8th plays out, what happens is we start having dominoes. And that's the best way to describe it. We will have the Federal infantry coming down here. Confederate infantry arrives. When the next piece of their infantry arrive, they extend out towards the east. Then the next towards the east. Then the northeast. And they will start establishing a line that way. The Federals will try to meet that threat by coming down here, making assaults across Laurel Hill, which are thrown back time and again with losses, and they will do the same thing. they will start stacking off in that direction behind the camera. And so we have these growing battle lines, much like we would see at the Wilderness. We will see it in North Anna at our next battle, and then of course Coral Harbor when we get down to there in late May and early June. To kind of wrap up the fighting here at Laurel Hill, this won't do it justice. When Robinson's division arrived down here, they will charge across the field towards the 2nd and 3rd South Carolina. Both of those units had just lost their commanding officers in the Wilderness. They had arrived at the right place at the right time for Robert E. Lee, but had been thrown into a hellacious battle. Now we have John Robinson, who's leading the Federals across. He is struck in the left knee, knocked out of action. That means we lost the division commander. More veteran troops will try to pour across that field. It doesn't go well. This will include the 140th New York, who opened our battle in the Wilderness. They came across Saunders Field. They have a knack of making impetuous charges during the war. On Little Round Top, they charged into action. At Saunders Field, they did the same thing. And here at Laurel Hill, they will go charging across this field behind their colonel, George Ryan, who's on horseback and who will be killed in action going across Laurel Hill. The 5th Corps will be thrown back. They'll try again. They will be thrown back. And unfortunately for them, the Confederates will start to put artillery on that hill. Their line kind of juts forward and creates a salient position, which these men can't really tell because it's kind of an optical illusion. So as they march forward, some of the men think they're going right into a straight Confederate battle line, but they're hit on their left, they're hit in the front, and they're unable to carry that position, drive back the Confederates. But there are some little punch bowls and things across that field that actually cover the Federals. As they go into some of these gullies across the field, the Confederates can't actually fire into certain parts of the field. In fact, John Hennigan's South Carolina Brigade will be broken for a brief time by some 5th Corps troops because they got so close to them, they didn't know they were there. Broke through, Confederate counterattack pushes them back. Also over on Laurel Hill will come some Marylanders for the Union under Andrew Dennison. Andrew Dennison will be wounded. He's a brigade commander. And brigade command will fall to a guy named Charles Phelps of the 7th Maryland. Phelps went into battle in a brand new $90 coat. And he said after the battle, it was still a good coat, except for the fact it had 6 bullet holes in it. He would be shot up going across the field, including one that will enter his arm. He will be felled just a few feet from the Confederate lines. One of his captains will come running up, I think a guy named Ephraim Anderson. He will run up, try to save his colonel who's on the ground. He is also going to be pinned down under Confederate fire. There's such a fire going back and forth across this field that the Confederates want to capture these 2 officers, but refuse to sally forth to do so. And they said, hey, you can come in here. And eventually they will capture Charles Phelps. Phelps, amazingly, will make an escape. As he is a prisoner of war going south towards Richmond, Phil Sheridan, whose horsemen will decide to break away and ride off towards Richmond to do battle with Jeb Stuart, will actually free this prisoner train, and Charles Phelps later on will be awarded the Medal of Honor for his actions here at Spotsylvania Court House and be freed, and writes all about this after the war. And over in this section for you 20th Maine fans, this is where the 20th Maine will do battle behind our camera. They will be in support of Samuel Wiley Crawford's Pennsylvania Reserve Division. Wiley Crawford's knocked out of action. His 2nd in command, his 3rd in command, his 4th in command are all knocked out of action in this area. And the 20th Maine will watch as the Pennsylvania Reserves, who only have a few weeks left in the war, will break and run at different points. And then they will engage with hand-to-hand combat over here with some of the Confederates for a brief time, much like you would see over on Little Round Top. But the battle that took place at Laurel Hill is important. It's overlooked largely, but this is the blocking position that Jeb Stuart places here. It bottles up the bulk of the Federal forces and now establishes our battle lines here at Spotsylvania Court House. They'll follow the topography of the land down here, mirroring one another, and most importantly, we've moved from the Wilderness into open fields. That means we now have to start digging in, and this is where we will start to see the field fortifications really spring up. One man, to paraphrase in the Union Army, said that if you give the Confederates 24 hours, they can build works. If you give them 48 hours, they can make them formidable. If you give them 72 hours, they can make them impregnable. By the end of this campaign, though, they can do all of that work in just less than 24 hours. and make their lines impregnable like we'll see at Cold Harbor. But there will be weak points here at Spotsylvania Court House, and we'll explore those on some other videos as we make our way along.
Good. Great stuff, Chris. We hope you've learned a little bit about Laurel Hill. I want to say, that it's interesting that, Chris noted how many of Crawford's guys are down by now, and how the South Carolinians have their commanders down. These armies are changing. They're not only changing the way that they entrench and reinforce their positions, but they're changing in terms of their personnel and their culture. They're adapting to the new circumstances as this campaign moves on. A couple of things that I want to say real quick here, and that you can be rewarded. A lot of people go to that Spotsylvania exhibit shelter, then they come and see the cool monument. We're going to do a separate video on there marking what happened right at this spot. But they fail to take a very interesting trail out through these woods and all the way over to Laurel Hill there, or you can do it in reverse and go out Hancock Road and take it and see a part of Laurel Hill you probably haven't seen before. You're rewarded at the terminus of this, sort of at the farthest point of the loop, seeing some markers, including one to the Marylanders in the most distant woods over there. So check out a new part of this battlefield. Lastly, we have at the Trust, you have been helping us preserve some land around Spotsylvania. A lot of it has been a couple of miles sort of to the east, northeast of here, but the most recent acquisition is actually this parcel right here at the entrance to the park. Who knows what development could have happened over there, and you helped us swoop in, secure that land, and that will become part of the stewardship of the National Park Service before we hope too long. So thanks to Chris for that awesome narration. You have anything to add? He's walking closer.
Thanks, Andy, for filming this. Thank you, Gary. I'm trying to take as much time as humanly possible because Andy has to edit this very long video.
And thank you all for...
No, we're done.
Hello, this is Trace Atkins. To stay up to date on all the latest and coolest videos, please subscribe to the Trust's YouTube channel. Preserve, educate, inspire.